Week 3 of spring ball kicks off tomorrow. Here's everything I'm going to be paying attention to.
You are Locked On Sun Devils, your daily podcast on the Arizona State Sun Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Richie Bradshaw, and I will be your guide for everything Arizona State Sun Devils. A special shout out to my everydayers who are here every day, and thanks for making us your first listen of the day. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications wherever you're getting your podcast, and stay in touch with the show by following me on Twitter at RichieBrads36 and the podcast at LO_Sun Devils. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. These days, every potential new hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back in. Today, we are going to be previewing week 3 of spring ball. And it's crazy that it's already gotten to the third week now, and there's been a lot that we've learned about this team. And I think the biggest thing that we've learned so far is that these guys are bought into the culture. You see the hustle in between drills. You see these guys are having fun, but they're working hard. They're very passionate. They're pushing each other. They're finding ways to get the most out of the reps they're getting, to get the most out of the enthusiasm that they're putting out there. They build each other up. They challenge each other. This has been a very productive spring ball. And you hope that it continues to snowball and that you are going to see more and more and more and more guys that end up building up the culture and build up the guys around them. And I'm really excited to see who ends up becoming leaders on this team. But we cross that bridge when we get to it. Right now, we're looking at this upcoming week, Tuesday and Thursday, that I'll be there for, and then Saturday to give you that word of mouth. Tomorrow and Thursday, I am going to be paying attention to quite a lot of things. There's specific players that I'm going to be looking for. There's going to be things that I want to see. There's stuff that's going to drag my biggest attention, and that's what we're here to talk about. Let's go ahead and start with the things I want to see. This goes without saying, but one-on-ones. There's nothing more exciting than some good one-on-ones. And we have had some really good back and forth in between the receivers and the defensive backs so far. There's been some great plays from both sides. And there's some really exciting highlight guys, right? Jordan Tyson looked phenomenal in his first full week of practice for the Sun Devils after battling through injuries since the start of last training camp. He looks like he's very comfortable now. He's moving around well, and it turns out he's still really good at catching the football. Troy O'Mary, someone that we've talked about many a times, he also looks pretty dang good. Like, he's just posting up on guys. He is able to use his size to just get up and get the football as long as it's somewhere in his zip code. But defensively, there's been some guys that have played well too. Montana Warren is someone that I've talked about many a times on this show. And Keith Abney has shown some glimpses. Guys who were brought to my attention were Keontez Bradley and Rodney Bimage. Bimage is the freshman for ASU coming out of Houston. And Bradley is a redshirt freshman who I feel like kind of got lost in the shuffle with all the guys who were coming back. And yeah, he looks pretty darn good. He's someone that's grabbing my attention. We'll talk about those guys a little more detail later. But of course, the one-on-ones, man. Like, we all want to see one-on-ones. It's what drives our attention the most. That's absolutely at the top. But I also want to see the progression at the quarterback position. More than anything, I want to see these guys start getting more comfortable, building a rhythm, and creating chemistry with their receivers. This is something that we're going to continue to look at week after week. But this week, I'm going to be paying closer attention than before because you are going into the third week. You now have 6 practices under your belt and whatever time you spent off the field getting to know these guys. So I'm going to be paying attention to how the quarterbacks look. Are they going to be a little more comfortable in the system? Are they going to take more chances, or are they going to be a little more conservative with the way they attack? Really interested to kind of see what the mentality is going to be. Because I think we know that Trenton Bourguet is just very smart, very tactful, and does his best to not turn the football over. But is this maybe the week he gets a little more aggressive and he starts pushing a little bit more? There's going to be a lot of energy and a lot of emotion during this week. And we'll talk about the reason why a little later on in the podcast. But this might be the week that you really start to see the quarterbacks from Bourguet to Sam Levitt to Navi Bruzon start to really get more aggressive, or maybe just get more comfortable in the offense. But I want to see and compare how it looked from week 1 to week 3, and we'll revisit it again at the end of spring ball as well. Last thing that I want to see this week, lots of rotation. I mentioned this last week. I mentioned this at the start, but I just want to see rotation. I'm feeding a fed horse here, but we're starting to see guys that we weren't talking about at the start of training camp really start to pick up steam 2 weeks in. Keontae Bradley, Rodney Bimage, Caleb Black. There's been guys that weren't mainstream conversation players, and suddenly it's almost impossible to overlook them. You look at the way that those 3 have played. You look at the way that some of the other guys have played. And it's so hard to watch practice and sit there and go, oh, I'm going to watch Cam Scadaboo. I'm going to watch Troy O'Mary. I'm going to watch Sam Levitt. I'm going to watch Clayton Smith. Whoever. But then all of a sudden, Keontae Bradley, number 23, is deflecting a pass on a go route. And it's like, oh, who are you? I need to put you down in my notes. That's what these guys are starting to do, is they're starting to put themselves on the radar of like, hey, I'm here. You can't forget about me. I'm still on this ASU team, and I'm really good at what I do. There's a reason that I was redshirted, is because I got to develop and learn stuff. There's a reason why I was a high 3-star coming out of high school. There's a reason why ASU took a chance on me through the transfer portal. There's a reason why I have been learning the ropes the last 2-3 years. There's a ton of guys here that are going to start popping and getting your attention. That's what I want to see out of this rotation. So feeding the fed horse. I just want to see guys going in and out the whole spring. That's what I want. Lots of rotation. I don't want to see the same lineups over and over and over again. Play around with it. You know what? Get Keontae Bradley as number 1 corner. Get Keyshawn Elliott as number 1 linebacker. Put Anthony Cooper back inside at tackle. Let's play around with the offensive line. Where can you put Sean Na'a? Let's play around at running back. Where are you going to slide Kyson Brown into? How much are you going to play Caleb Black on the outside or the inside? What does the tight ends look like? Give me all of the rotation. But with the rotation, I want to see more and more guys start to stand out. There has been no shortage of players who are grabbing your attention. We'll talk about them a little later on in the podcast, but what I want to do next is take a look at what to pay attention to. Not so much what I want to see, but the storylines that we need to be paying close attention to that could shape the rest of, not training camp, the rest of practice for spring ball that we're going to see. And we're going to talk about it in just a moment. This is the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Guys, I want to talk to you about our friends over at LinkedIn. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find qualified professionals that are right for the role. That's why you need to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the right tools to find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. It gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else, and LinkedIn does all of this while making the process easy and intuitive. Hiring is easy when you have that many qualified candidates, and so easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses will get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. That's why LinkedIn is constantly finding new ways to make the process easier, and even launched a feature that helps write job descriptions and makes that process easier and quicker. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day and find that you're turning the volume down because of all the shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Let's get back into our conversation now and take a look at what to pay attention to. Again, this is not what I want to see. This is what I feel responsible for, what I feel it is my job to pay attention to. And not just me, everyone else in the media, and for us to deliver the information to you. Address the elephant in the room. Rashad Samples, the wide receivers coach for Arizona State, one of the most integral and terrific, bottom line, recruiters across the country, was great for ASU. He's been highly recognized by people outside of the state as a great recruiter. He goes to Oregon. He is now their running backs coach as well as their assistant head coach. How are we going to respond? This will be the first spring ball practice without Samples. And Samples brought a lot to the table. He was very passionate. He was very energetic. He was somebody that demanded perfection. So you weren't going to go out there and just run routes. You were going to block. You were going to have those contested throws your way. You were going to need to work off of any kind of press. You needed to be a good route runner. There was a lot that Samples demanded from his players. And when I say demand, I mean demand. Like, you were all in or you were not going to get snaps. He was someone who took his job very, very seriously, and the players responded. You had plenty of receivers who were brand new to the program last year who immediately gravitated to Rashad Samples. And one of the biggest questions now, and I brought this up a little bit yesterday, we had an emergency pod for when Samples left the program for a new opportunity. You haven't checked that out, check it out. It's like less than 15 minutes, real quick view for you guys. It's basically my instant reactions to it. Not scripted, just kind of like, hey, this happened 20 minutes ago. But you're curious what it does. And not even from like a transfer portal standpoint where guys could leave, but what's the morale look like? How are these players going to respond to such an important vocal leader and a young guy who's able to relate to them? How are they going to respond to him being gone? It's going to be huge for the wide receivers. Easily the most important spot to pay attention to. I don't think it's relatively close, but for what it's worth, I will also be looking at the running backs in the passing game. I want to see more than just Raleek Brown catch the football. I want to see how everybody is going to be rotated in. You know, Sean Aguano in the pre-spring press conference, I guess is what you could call it, said he wants everybody to be able, willing, and capable, even though capable and able are two in the same, one and the same, whatever. I still want to see them do it. And I want to see guys who you wouldn't expect to be involved in the passing game very much because of guys like Relief Brown and Cameron Scadaboo. I want to see them running routes. I want to see them getting out there and making the most of their opportunities. And this also plays into Samples leaving, because there's going to be some kind of opportunity here for someone to step up and say, hey, I know that there is a loss of leadership here. Let me step in and show you why it's not just going to be the receivers who have to adjust. What I mean by that is a guy like Relief Brown can say, hey, I can step in. I can help out. It's not just on the receivers to make that adjustment. We as the running backs are going to help. We as the tight ends are going to help. Just the receiving game period is what I want to see. Last thing to really pay attention to is the defensive backs. How are they going to match up with either very determined or very undetermined wide receivers? How the receivers show up, whether they're feeling great and they want to prove something, or whether they're, a little down in the dumps, whether they are questioning themselves or the program or whatever. How do the DBs respond? Because at least on Tuesday, it's either going to be a great day or a bad day for DBs. I do not think it's going to be in the middle. I think you're either going to see all of the corners and safeties just jam these guys and do not give up the catches and record interceptions and whatever. That's one side, or these wide receivers are going to put them in a blender. I really don't think there is going to be any gray area here. These receivers will dictate how the practice goes, though. That is my strongest take here. How the receivers respond on Tuesday is going to dictate how practice goes. So are you going to come out and prove that you're still going to be a great player, even with a great coach like Rashad Samples no longer with the program? Or are you going to come out flat? Because it'd be understandable if they came out and they were a little down in the dumps. That doesn't excuse it. They need to come out and perform no matter what, but at least you can understand it. For Tuesday by itself, by Thursday, they got to get it figured out. So you can have a down in the dumps, feel sorry for yourself, practice on Tuesday if you feel the need. I know that Kenny Dillingham will tell you take Sunday when the news is announced to be upset and get right back to work on Monday, get back in the lab, focus. That's what Kenny Dillingham wants. Are they going to respond that way? This is a huge loss. I cannot emphasize that enough. This was brutal. How is everyone going to respond? The wide receivers are going to dictate it. Because if they're not all the way there, the quarterbacks are going to be creating turnovers. If they're not all the way there, the defense is just going to absolutely kill it. And there's not going to be any room for the offense to look good. It's going to be about how you respond. Hopefully, the receivers are ready to step up, step into that role, and make sure that the morale stays up, even with such a big loss. There's a few guys that I'm going to be paying very close attention to, and I'm going to let you know who they are in just a moment. This is the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. One more time, I appreciate you guys for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day. Wherever you're getting your podcast, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you get an update whenever we post new content. Shout out to my everydayers who are here every day. Rounding it up with the players I'm going to be paying the closest attention to. The first is Jordan Tyson. Tyson stole the show last week. He stole the spotlight. He was the name to talk about in practice. He's fast. He's explosive. He catches the ball really well. He makes moves. He is that lightning in a bottle kind of player. And when the ball is in his hands, you feel like he can do anything. We saw that when he was at Colorado. He looked like he was back at that form or getting to that form last week during practice. Does he build upon it? That's what I'm going to be watching. He is one of the guys I am most excited about this week. I'm also going to be paying attention to Sam Levitt. How is the quarterbacks going to look? I said that I want to see the progression. I want to see if you're going to be more aggressive. I want to see if you're going to stay conservative. I want to see how you are going to be playing, not just from your own aspect, but how you respond to the receivers. Let's say the receivers are down in the dumps, right? How are the quarterbacks going to be able to get the receivers to respond? Get them on the same page and say, hey, I know this sucks, but we got a job to do. Are the quarterbacks going to be able to step up if, big if, the receivers are not as motivated? I don't think that's going to be a problem. I think these guys are going to come out very determined. But if they don't, it's going to be up to the quarterbacks to be able to pick them up. Give those guys opportunities and say, hey, I know that Rashad Samples is gone, but let's take everything that he taught you and use it and show why he was such a highly touted coach, recruiter, future building block for an organization. Take what he taught you. Let's put it on display. Can the quarterbacks get that out of them? Sam Levitt, I'm paying attention to you in particular. I also want to take a look at Jaden Rashada, but in a much smaller scope. Last week, he was tossing the football a little bit, not in drills or anything, but it was good to see him out there. He's dressed for every practice. He's participating with the coaches and with his teammates and everything. He's just not under center, taking the snaps in scrimmages and 7-on-7s and whatnot. And I don't expect him to. But what I do want to see is if he's still going to be throwing the football, if he maybe does the individual drills just with the other quarterbacks. I want to pay attention to him. I want to see the demeanor on the field. It's going to be really important. Defensively, I already mentioned these guys. I'm going to mention them again. Keontae Bradley, Rodney Bimage. Bimage especially has been one of the most, what's the word? Biggest risers, I would say, during spring ball. I don't know that anybody has drawn as much attention to himself as what Rodney Bimage has. This kid's playing crazy. Like, he's not afraid to go toe-to-toe with some of the bigger receivers, some of the faster receivers, some of the more talented receivers on this team. He steps up, he goes to his competition, he says, let's go. It's me and you. It's mano y mano. One-on-one. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're a Heisman winner. I don't care if you're a walk-on. My name is Rodney Bimage, and I'm here to give you hell. I want to see more of Rodney Bimage. Keontae Bradley, someone who's been brought to my attention, also someone I'm going to be looking at. The defensive backs in general, like I mentioned, they're something I'm going to be paying a ton of attention to from a professional aspect is like, how are they going to respond? Are they going to take advantage of receivers who are maybe down in the dumps? Are they going to step up against receivers who are super determined and super motivated? How are they going to match whatever the energy is that these receivers bring, whether it's good or bad? How do you match that energy? Are you going to be better? Are you going to meet them at the middle? What is it that you're going to do? But Keontae Bradley, Rodney Bimage, Montana Warren, Keith Abney are just a few of the guys that I want to pay close attention to. Beyond them, there's a handful of guys that I'm going to watch. Of course, I'm going to watch Raleek Brown. Of course, I'm going to watch Scatavoo. I'm going to watch Clayton Smith. I'm going to watch Keyshawn Elliott. I'm going to watch Miles Rouser and Cole Martin. Like, I'm going to watch a lot of guys. That's part of the best part of going to these practices is just seeing the behind the scenes and like getting a taste of the new transfers or the young guys, the veterans, little bit of everything, the new coaches, right? There's all sorts of fun stuff here that I'm going to be paying attention to. I want to see one-on-ones. I want to see how the receivers respond. I want to see rotation. I want to see Jordan Tyson and Rodney Bimmage. I want to see Jaden Rashada. Who's going to step up? The biggest story here is absolutely the receivers for Tuesday, probably Thursday too. By Saturday, maybe it's old news. But at least for the 2 days I'm there, that's where my attention is borderline solely going to be on is how are these guys going to respond? It's not going to be easy. There is a huge hole here with Rashad Samples gone. But again, to beat this drum over and over and over and over, how do you respond? Kenny Dillingham's going to be asking those guys as well. Step up. Time to be a leader. What do you guys think? What do you want to pay attention to? Who do you want me to pay attention to? Let me know in the comments. Hit me up on Twitter at Richie Bradshaw36, the podcast at LO_Sun Devils. Wherever you're getting your podcast, though, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications wherever you're getting your podcast. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day. And shout out to my everydayers who are here every day. We will be back again tomorrow. I will be recapping you on Tuesday's practice, the good, the bad, the indifferent, how everyone matched the energy that we talked about, and everything in between. So there's never been a better time to hit that subscribe button. I'll see you tomorrow, and until then, you keep it locked right here on Locked On Sun Devils.